Good morning, everybody. P.D. Turner, executive producer and host of your Break It Down show. Thought I'd pop in real quick here, waiting on Brad to come in, and I thought I'd take a moment to say hello to you all. I don't get to do this often enough, and so here I am, P.A. Turner, host of the show. Went and saw you two this past week in Vegas, and the show was it's just incredible. You probably have to want to be a U2 fan or a U2 fan adjacent to go see it, but that Sphere, it's a wonderful venue. One of the things that occurred to me is the music has to be big enough to you're competing with this venue that can do so many things, and you need artisans across a number of different disciplines. The we'll call it the slideshow, the just the moving pictures, the images, the collage of things that you can throw at an audience is so massive. You have to think way beyond just still images, like the traditional old slideshow or like the melting plastic picture of like the late 60s, early 70s. That stuff's all fine, and you can bring that stuff in, but you have to get much bigger. One of the things that you two did during the show was they sent data, like images, kind of like the Matrix, right? Just a bunch of images across the screen, and it sent that up into infinity above your head, and then brought it down with a roof that wasn't there, and just remarkable. The ability to play to something that size it's an amazing leap forward in live venues. And so if you guys get the chance, either go to see the Sphere Experience, which I haven't seen yet, or go see U2 live or whatever band. I don't know what kind of bands can compete and hang together with that venue, but boy, that Sphere is awesome. Hey, good morning, Brad. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I don't hear you. I don't hear you. Let's see.
You don't
Maybe
hear me.
let's see if my end is screwed up here. Speakers. I got it. It's me. All right. Now talk.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. I
Perfect.
knows my settings better than I do, so I always have to reconvince it. Otherwise,
Yeah, I'm at my place in Florida here. Just caught your discussion about you two. I actually saw them at the Sphere. I
yeah,
guess that was last weekend. Yeah, last weekend. It was unbelievable.
it's yeah. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just gonna say I don't I have a lot of colleagues who take psychedelics, and I've never partaken, and I have no judgment either way. But all I
Yeah,
can tell you is that I haven't taken them, but I felt like I had an out of body experience being in that dome. Like it was something that
yeah,
was supernatural, like spiritual. Actually, I was caught up. I was enraptured with not only
right.
because I'm a massive U2 fan, and I remember the Octoon Baby album when it launched, but
Yeah.
just the visuals combined with the music were just like it was sensory overload. It was such an incredible experience.
There's a couple things, and since you've seen it, let's spend a minute here. We will talk about your book and everything else, but when you look up at the theater before the show starts, you can see, and there's an opening, and you're like, "Is that covered?" Because I was at the Palazzo, and we were facing the Sphere, so you could see it in all its different forms. And it's
Hmm.
primarily the outer external shell is primarily open. So you look up, you can see the sky, and a helicopter flew overhead. And I thought, did that did that really happen? You know, because you could do that. You can fly a helicopter right over the top. And then when the show starts, there's like a concrete wall that's a background,
Yeah.
and then it disappears and it blows your mind right from the jump. And then my girlfriend was like, "That was that concrete wall there the whole time, or was it never there?" And
Yeah.
you just don't know. There's so it because the images are so real, and so many times you just have no idea when reality stops and this altered reality begins.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I When we walked in, my wife, she said, "This looks like the Pantheon in Rome." It's the dome
Yep.
ceiling with the opening at the top, and it did feel like we were in a giant version of the Pantheon. And yeah, look, I can't. I think it's an incredible sort of just credit to technology combined with art in
Right.
such a really impactful just expression. Again, I was overwhelmed with emotion. I think I was even in tears at one point. It was so incredible, and I wasn't alone. I was looking around. I mean that
Yeah.
place was literally like just people were enraptured. It was
Yeah.
incredible. So yeah.
So I haven't told this story publicly yet, but I want to add this into the record. So a while back, I get these great tickets from a thing called Vet Tix. I got to throw a shout out at Vet Tix. It's one of the best veteran benefits there is. And so either the venue, the artist, or someone will donate tickets. And so I get to go to, and I live in Southern California, so there's a zillion venues. And so I got to go see a Cirque show in LA at the Microsoft Theater. And it's called, what is it called? I can't remember right now. Yeah, but it's got an Italian name. Anyhow, I'll think of it if I don't think about it. But they had this little person attached to 6 giant balloons, right?
Hmm.
And she was floating above the audience, and the person with her was bouncing her in the air, and they bumped her out into the audience like a beach ball. And so
Hmm.
she's floating, and it's very safe. This all sounds terrifying. It's all safe and adorable and fun. And uh, I had said before the show, I'm not pulling my phone out. I'm just going to be in the moment. And I'm like, oh, they're going to throw this lady into the audience. I know how Cirque works. This is going to happen. And where we were sitting, and I'm like, it might come to, this whole thing might come to us. And sure enough, my buddy Pete, there's 2 Pete's. Um,
Hmm.
the lady is coming in, and she's like, "Can you give me a hand?" And then he stands up, boom, and he bumps her back up. And I forced myself to not take a picture of it. And so then I turned around and I gave in to pull my camera out because I wanted to capture what it was because it's so it's otherworldly. And so I say to my girlfriend before we go to the screen, I'm like, I'm not bringing my phone. I don't care if there's a lady attached to a balloon or not. It ain't happening. And sure enough, what does you two do? They attach a lady to a balloon.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
just
that
so
balloon was
good.
surreal, right? It felt like he really had a big giant balloon hovering around the dome, and the fact they had the big sort of a sheet tether
Yeah,
to it. It was
yeah,
amazing, just
yeah,
incredible.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. I
yeah.
don't know what other bands can. There are other bands, but I don't know whether bands can keep up with a level of artistry too. Required like the sounds, the music has to be huge, and then
Mm,
also the just the imagination. Because I think that you two could even like imagine it even bigger than what they did. Because sometimes you're like, okay, like we're doing it, but like there was like and maybe it was by design. There was some dynamic with the show where it kind of went up and down, but it, it's it is a major league attempt to put a
hmm.
band in that room and expect them to come out with something incredible.
What was your what was a song that I would say is the one you identify with the most, or was the most impactful on your experience?
I love that whole album, even like the backside that doesn't get played as much. Um,
Mm,
but I just think The Fly has become something bigger than what it was even back then,
mm,
like become more true. And so it just really hits me when you see the use of imagery and the words. And so that for me, the way they did that, the way they took the theme from 30 years ago and brought it forward, that just that really resonated with me. But I also love So Cruel. There are a number of great ones. And I thought Beautiful Day, which isn't from the album, but it is from the show, I thought that was also
mm.
incredible. And that's just an incredible song. And
Yeah.
what about you? And then we'll move on, I swear.
Yeah. No, no. I was going to say for me, The Streets Have No Names.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
Joshua Tree was probably, I mean, Octane Baby is for me the most impactful album of theirs, but Joshua Tree was the one that really I woke up. That was when I became aware of U2 as a band and this sort of
yeah,
unique sound, particularly with Edge's guitaring. But as the sun was rising in the dome and there's that flag with vapors coming out of the end of it,
yeah,
and we had friends with us who had been to Burning Man, and they said, "This is like Burning Man. This is
yeah,
what you would see if you went to Burning Man." And that guitar riff, when it kicks in, it's like, oh my gosh, I got goosebumps all over my body when that started playing. So,
yeah.
but love the overall experience. And for those who haven't listened to Bono's book, Surrender,
Oh,
and I do mention listen, don't read,
yeah,
listen to it,
yeah,
because he narrates it, and every chapter, it's 40 chapters, ties in the musical themology behind all of the music. I think it
yeah.
is one of the best books I've heard, and therefore read in a very long time. It is very, very well done.
I don't think there is a better audio book recording ever. I don't think anyone's ever going to top that. It is there's so much in that book. Like I like you, I love you too, but just the amount of work creatively and the performance of it, it's incredible. Yeah, if you at all can I get some people can't take Bono. I get that. I'm not talking to you, but if you can all at all stomach that, he is profound. He's deep. He's oh my gosh, he's masterful. He sings his adult wise self sings a little duet with his young self in that book,
Mm,
and it just really changes how you see. that whole band, his whole life. It's amazing.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, well, let's do some actual work now. so for
That's
so
great.
in general, if you guys want to learn more about Brad, go to his website. I'm going to put this link here in the notes on the side. You guys will see that. That's his main website. But then I'm also going to put up his latest efforts, startup startup book right here. Sorry, I've got to do this live. I'm doing this. And so there's the website. Here is, as soon as it posts, there it goes. Startup Santa book. You look, you've done well in starting companies, and anybody who does this, who has your kind of spirit, you guys always want to give back, and you always want to be guides, because it is tough. Like right now, I'm starting two different companies right now, and they're both creative companies. It is a lot of work. It is a lot of work
Mm.
to fly and build at the same time, and to try to do the things you have to do, but also do the things like that pump the heart of the company, so that like you can exist, so you can do the things that you have to. It's really, really tough, and knowing when to bring in expertise and everything else. But I guess I'll ask you, why did you write the book?
Yeah. Well, look, I didn't want to write this book actually. There were sort of two reasons. First of all, it seemed like a really daunting task. As somebody who's a multi-time founder, the thing I've learned
Right.
about myself is I'm really good at starting things and finishing things, but those in betweens, the messy middle, that is not something I really do well in. And writing a book seems like a lot of messy middle, and I can profess that it actually is a messy middle. So that was reason number one. And then reason number two was I was kind of at this place. Well, the world's already a pretty noisy place. There's enough
Yeah.
thought leaders and people out there. Like, why do I need to add to the noise and the clutter that's out there? And so where I landed on was that, I've had a pretty adventurous life. I kind of came from, I had no business being in the businesses that I was in. I tell people my life is a series of happy accidents.
Right.
And I thought at the very least, I should have, put together a memoir, just putting a chronology together of how this happened and what were the key learnings from this. And sort of two things as I went through that process. Number one is I found it deeply cathartic.
Mm.
I've since come to learn that there's something called narrative therapy, where just by writing, you process and you help correlate ideas and close loops and just get clearer on what exactly happened. Because we don't learn from what happens; we only learn from stopping to reflect. And writing is a force and function of reflection, or it's a part of the
Mm.
reflection process. And so then you can start to unpack some of the, as I tell people, the wisdom from my wounds, like a lot of
Yeah.
mistakes made. And that was sort of the first thing. And then the second thing is I had some friends who said, hey, I hear you're writing something. I'd love to read a chapter or whatever. So I started, circulating a few chapters. And then I got feedback from people saying, hey, it would be incredibly selfish of you if you
Uh-huh.
didn't release this to the world, because there's somebody who's
Mm.
going to benefit from this writing. And I can tell you, I've actually already released chapter one at our website. If you go there and sign up, you get chapter one free. And the amount of feedback I've already had from people, I know that, again, I'm grateful for the feedback, but really this was, this is something that I didn't know what to expect on the other side. But the amount of feedback I've had from people that said, oh, this was super helpful for me at this stage in my journey as a founder entrepreneur, just having some of those ideas and lessons. So I tell people this book is not a to-do book. It's a what not to do book. Because while I didn't go to school and get an MBA, I have a PhD in DUMB from the School of Hard Knocks, because I have done it all wrong.
Yeah.
And I record
Yeah.
most of those missteps in my journey in that book.
I just downloaded, just while we just did that last little minute and a half. I just downloaded, put my name in, I downloaded my thing. Just to display everybody, that's how easy it is, and it's not hard at all to do. And you just go to the link that's right here below my face. You and for those who didn't watch the earlier show, that's fine. Just understand that when Brad says happy accidents, he didn't start off as a guy who was going to go down this path. You were a toy maker. It's like, how did you end up in the world of all these other things? And we've talked about that in the past. But you're right; these happy accidents happen. When I, I go to my high school every year, first semester, second semester, and I talk to the kids there. And one of the biggest messages, 'cause I'm like, I am you from the future. Ask me anything. I'm not going to
Mm,
bullshit you. I'm not your parents. I'm going to
yeah.
talk to you like, I'm you. And I tell them like the path is the path. it goes every direction you can imagine. There's death on it. There's all kinds of things. But if you think you're on the path, you have no
Mm,
idea what's coming. So don't worry so much about the path. You're going to have to endure it, but it's also going to be wonderful. And I just try to like get them to calm down a little bit, like take part of the path is taking the backpack off, taking that by a lake, and you hang out, and you meet
mm,
somebody, you talk to a girl or you talk to a dude, and you all of a sudden you go on a different journey in the path,
yep.
but I think you get that with your journey, that sometimes you take on things that are daunting. A lot of times you fail. And I don't know if you're like me, but I think about all of my ideas that I could have done. 99.99999% of them I can't, shouldn't, or won't ever do. But
Mm,
there are the ones that survive that culling, and they're the ones that you do, like this show. This show is ridiculous. I'm going to go talk to Rich Little in a couple of weeks. Who gets to do that? It's ridiculous, right? But all the other show ideas that I've never even started, there's all kinds of failure in life. And
hmm.
you can't let that be the thing that keeps you from going forward.
Totally. Yeah. You miss 100% of the shots you never take. And there's a book that impacted me actually called The Five Regrets of the Dying. And in that book, it's a palliative care nurse who's looking after
Mm,
people at their end of life. And she starts to notice themes around people and what their regrets are as they review their life. And the amazing thing is their top five regrets, 4 of the 5 are for things they didn't do, not
mm,
things they did.
yeah,
The girl that they didn't go talk to, the entrepreneurial idea they never explored, that challenge of climbing to a new height or a new sort of position in their business that they never attempted to seek out. And so that to me is kind of a haunting thing. I know that my goal is to make sure that I wear out, not rust out, that when I'm laying on my deathbed, that I can literally look back and say, I've left it all behind on the field of
yeah,
life. Like I
yeah,
explored the possibilities within me to the fullest extent that they're capable of. And that's not easy, by the way, because when we're all limited by our comfort zones. And when you get outside your comfort zone, it's uncomfortable. That's why it's called your comfort zone versus your uncomfort
yeah,
zone. But what you find
yeah,
the other side of that, you find on the other side of pain, a very better version of you that expands your comfort zone and the possibilities. And, like I grew up in a rural town in the prairies of Canada, known for agriculture and oil. I had no business getting into the toy business. It made no sense
mm,
for me to do that. And it was just basically curiosity, creativity, and then the courage to try, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah,
people have
yeah, yeah,
ideas. I tell people ideas are like noses. Everyone has one. It's what you do with the idea and having the courage to actually try, knowing that most ideas you're going to fail at. That's actually okay. Failing
yeah,
forward is part of the deal.
yeah,
It's only when you become a failure, when you get knocked down and choose to stay down, that is when it really becomes something that is, a problem for your life and trajectory. So, anyways, that is my philosophy on just, Jim Rohn used to say, no, in life you may not be able to do all you find out, but make sure you find out all you can do.
yeah, yeah.
And I
Yep.
really want to do that.
And you get to change your mind. You get to put stuff down. You get to leave it. You get to pick it back up. It really is choose your own adventure, as long as you allow yourself to do that. It doesn't mean it's not hard work. There's always going to be hard work. There's always going to be the grind, the misery, and everything else. But you have to balance that. And we talked about this last time, but I think it just bears repeating. People often mention work-life balance, and what that usually for me is code is like, I work way too fucking much.
Mm,
And you typically don't hear about the person saying, work-life balance. I actually have to do some work. Like, it doesn't go that way. And so how does one who's doing all these incredible things, how do you put yourself, and more importantly, your type A's and your alphas, who are different people, how do you put them in a mindset of slowing down, take the backpack off, and do something else, and like, there's nothing, like, I'm thinking about Richard Gere. I got no place else to go. Like, okay, well then that's the problem. We'll work on that right there. From officer to gentleman. So, how do you deal with those things where folks are like so bent on success, and you have to be at some point, but at some point
yeah.
you have to balance your life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a deep question, actually. Literally, there's a lot to unpack there, and we could go on this one, riff on it for quite a while. But
Yeah.
what I in the book I explore this idea of the iceberg. And
Mm,
what you know about icebergs is that what you see at the surface is actually the small part, that the vast majority is down below the surface, right?
right.
And if you liken that to us as humans, that at the surface, what we leave is what we see as our results, you see our work, and then you see the attitude that somebody shows
Mm,
up with. Those are the visible things. Below
right.
that surface, though, are all the formative foundational pieces that produce what you see above the surface. And down there, you have the virtues you ascribe to, the things that you really want to value in the way you behave, the values, which are where you spend your time. And then down below that is your belief system.
Right.
And so all those things are actually what force that part at the top visibly to become self-evident. And so the problem is most people spend time working on the results at the top without doing the deeper work of understanding what are their belief systems and are they
Right.
serving them and they're actually helping them progress forward. And your values are where you invest your time, which is your most precious resource. Like, time and attention, you can't replace that. Like this time that you and I have together will never be replaced again.
Right.
And this time, 24 hours from now, will be one less day we have left in our lives. So we got to know this is something that we really need to protect as precious. And so where you invest your time is where you ultimately value things. And I
Mm.
hear, like, I can tell you in my life, I used to say things like, oh, I value my family and I value my faith. And I had all these things. But if you looked at my calendar and audited it, and you would see that I was very lopsided. I spent way, way too much time on the financial engine driving and not those other things. And look, I'm not a big believer in balance, but I'm a big believer in awareness of imbalance, like
Mm,
knowing when you're out of balance. And there also might be seasons of life where you have to be out of balance. Like when you're starting a startup, that's a lot of work. Like,
yeah.
90% of the fuel for Elon's rockets is burnt up before they get out of the atmosphere. And so, getting something going takes extraordinary effort. But as long as you're aware that it's for a season and it doesn't become the habit that you then form for the balance of your life, so that you suddenly
Right.
realize that, wow, I've developed this one really big muscle. I got my big bicep, but the rest of my body's atrophied because I didn't spend any time doing the reps
Right.
to actually invest the time to make those valuable. Because what you value becomes valuable. And that means you need to invest time and your agency and attention into those things.
Yeah. No, that's it's great counsel. One of the things too, and I'll use a current event. There's a lady named Kim Ing. She actually is out in Florida. She is, or was until recently, the general manager of the Marlins, which is pretty remarkable because this is a lady. But
Mm,
the Marlins are like, "Hey, we're going to hire a director of baseball operations above you," and she's like, "Not with me as your GM, you're not." And this is a very common thing you'll see in business, where a business will say, Brad and Pete, which one do we pick? Well, we're going to pick Brad. And good job. Like, Brad's awesome, right? And then they go to Pete and they go, hey, Pete, we're going to put Brad in that role we discussed. And then Pete has to go, okay, well, you know, am I valuable to this company now, right? And then you have to
mm,
have the courage, like Kim said, that I'm prepared to walk. Unless you've got something else you want to throw at me, like, it's time for me to go, because I know what my iceberg is made out of. And
mhm,
I'm positive I'm going to go somewhere else and get a gig that suits me, and where I'm valued, where I know I'm at. And you often see people don't live in that way because I don't know, they can't because of life or whatever it is, but they don't know to stand up for themselves and say, hey, that's great. I'm glad you took on Brad. I want to turn in my 2 weeks because I'm going to go somewhere else. Because if you're that good, if you're second best at this position in this company, you're going to find another gig. That's just Pete's
mm.
world, but maybe you disagree on that. Maybe you agree. I don't know.
Yeah, look, I I think again it comes down to there's a whole lot, a lot we can unpack in these ideas. Look, I think what I've come to, one of the chapters I talk about in my book is Jenga.
Okay.
Um, and Jenga is an amazing game. And it actually comes from a Swahili term, which means to build.
Okay.
So that's the background of it. And if you understand the game principles, you know that there's certain blocks that are flexible and there's certain blocks that are foundational. And I actually relate it to my story of being in New York on 9/11, where I watched the
Mm,
Twin Towers fall and of course the tragedy of that, but it helped, I remember what was going through my mind at that time. I was there focused on business, some of the most important meetings of my life. It was an important place for me to be. And yet as I watched those towers fall, None
Yeah.
of the business I was doing, none of the, the worldly stuff I was chasing mattered. The only thing I cared about was my family. Like, that's it. That was the most
Yeah.
important thing. And so, like that, I talk about how, in your life, there's going to be certain blocks that are foundational that, if you disrupt them, it disrupts your life. And for me, those are my family, my faith, my fitness, and my financial engine, the things that are helping provide freedom for the way I live. And I recognize that at any given time, I need to be constantly paying attention to those. And if I let one of those drop, it creates a foundational fracture that can have
Mm.
my tower of life fall. Like, if my dad used to say all the time that, true health is wealth. And if you lose your health, right, this idea that most of us compromise and give our health to accumulate wealth. And yet, if you talk
Yeah.
to people who are wealthy, they'd say, I give it all away just to have my health again. Like, what a
Yeah.
paradox, right? So I
Boy.
just think it's really important that if we start today understanding that our values are where we invest our time, and that with that, where's the best place for me to invest my time so that my foundation is secure. And of course, there's optional things like fun, friends, what I call refining, which is growing and learning, as well as freedom, exploring ways and possibilities to expand your agency in a meaningful way. But those are things that you can set aside for a temporary time, but should come back to really explore all your possibilities. And they might be slightly different for you, but that's what I define in my life. And I
Sure.
think it's important that as you're thinking about whatever career path and whatever the opportunities are, how can I optimize to ensure my
Right.
foundational blocks do not get compromised?
I know in the book you talk about three flanks for a company, and this is always interesting because it's easy, and obviously in the book you explain this, but when you break things into three memorable things, it seems awfully simple. Like Mammoth's got, like, show up on time, know your marks, and tell the truth. Okay, well,
Mm,
that's easy, except for it's the hardest thing in the world to do because it's so complex, when you try to do all those things. But the three flanks, people, capital, systems. Man, I'll tell
mhm.
you what, when I was at the Palazzo, and I'm going to be a little critical of the Palazzo this week, they did everything great except for the things that they missed on. And it is hard to process 4,000 rooms worth of everything,
Mm,
and so there are things, that smells that come out of that hotel, and they're known for that on the negative side, right? And so
hmm.
I'm not trying to beat up on the Palazzo too hard, but that is a system of systems, right? Filled with
Sure.
people, and boy, the capital running through that place. So when you talk about people, capital, and systems, what does that mean to you, and what is your advice to us, our startup founder?
Yeah. Well, look, just to give some more background on that story, I actually go through my first bankruptcy, actually the first two bankruptcies, and talk about, how I went from a hero to a zero. I took a company that I bootstrapped from my basement that, in my early 20s, became one of the top companies in Canada. We were ranked on the Profit 100 5 years in a row. I was on a
Wow.
speaking tour. I was nominated for the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award. I mean, it was all kinds of like these accolades and stuff going on. And I since have come to learn that a little bit of ego can lead to a lot of overhead, and hubris is what precipitates the fall. And
Yeah.
as I've had a chance to reflect on it, I've now discovered that there was like three areas of my business that I was stressing by growing it, that by not reinventing them, I left myself exposed. So,
Mm.
growth is something we need as business. Like, as humans, we need to grow. That's just
Yeah.
the reality of life. We're gonna grow. I mean, you plant a
Right.
tree, it grows. Grass grows through concrete. You've seen that, or for asphalt. So things want to grow, and us humans are no different, and businesses. But there is a difference between sustainable growth and reckless growth. And the key is those three things, as you said: your people, your systems, and your process. If you're
Yeah.
not inventing those, reinventing those ahead of your growth, you're going to expose your company to risk of not being able to handle the workload, and you'll start to compromise the integrity of the value you're creating, whether it's what you just described, where you're having an experience that's less than optimal. So suddenly you just plant that seed of, their customer service is not as good as I think it should be for what I paid, right? There's a
Yeah.
bit of a value gap there. And
Yeah.
it shows a fracture from a lack of reinventing into either the people or the systems in that case. And of course, capital, like, it takes money to make money. And it depends on the type of business you're in, of course. But the
Yeah.
business I was in, we had to buy products, inventory them in a warehouse, ship them to customers, give them terms. And to grow that model, you just need more capital, buy more inventory so you can get more in the warehouse, so you can ship more and get more terms. There's no shortcut to growing that
Right.
model without more capital. And we were just always kind of hand to mouth, hand to mouth, hand to mouth, and got to a place where suddenly we had got upside down our balance sheet, broke covenants to the bank, got put into special loans, which basically is life support for business. They give you just enough cash to make payroll and just to meet obligations, but never to do anything that's actually bold and courageous and a part of your business plan. So, yeah, I share again wisdom of my wounds from like
Yeah.
what not to do and how to think about it based upon the rate of growth. Because I think
Yeah.
there's depending on how you're growing, depends on how often you need to reinvent that, and I talk about it in the book.
You know, when you talk about that, this is no different than like a military commander. Like, battalion commander runs about 1,000 people in a combat zone, right? And when you sit in the evening brief and you're going through everything, you'll see the commander obviously focus on the mission. What did you guys do today? What are we going to do tomorrow? We're brief missions. You see all that stuff, and probably about a third of the meeting is set on that, and then a third of it is who's getting awards, who's going on vacation, have you ordered boots, literally food, poop, water, all that stuff, systems, right? Like, how do
Yep.
we, are the showers all working? Is our electricity working? You know, all those things. A lot of time spent there because life support turns out really critical. This is in a combat zone. And then the other third you'll see is the commander will look and they go, "Hey, Brad, have you worked on that paper we talked about? You write it."
Mm.
And then Brad's like, "Oh, yes, sir. I've written about." And this is everybody's watching Brad now get mentored by the boss, you know.
Mm.
And there's mentorship live, real in time as he does. And so, like, the boss is mentoring people and showing them where to improve. Even his near peers, who are like his left and right arm, he's like, "I want you to do more of this, less of that, more of this, less." And he's tuning his machine. And this is in the middle of a fight. You would think, oh,
Yeah.
there's no time for that. He's just drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, and barking at people, which, yeah, that happens. But man, so much of that mission is really moving. Like, how do we get better food? What do you mean these guys can't get boots? You know, and there's so much of that. So even under the most extreme circumstances, like with this current war going on in Israel, between
Mm.
Israel and Palestine, an army can only move so fast, and it's if you run out of food, you're not fighting long. And so all of these things are all of these things mixed together, right? It's expensive to run a company, and if you get upside down with the hand to mouth, all of a sudden, like you said, you're hurting. What I don't want to take too much of your time, because I know we're limited on that, but what other parts of the book do you want to cover? Are there any other notable, like, lists of things that you find important for founders to know?
Yeah. Well, just to riff on what you just talked about from a
Please.
military perspective, chapter 1, which is free, which you'll get if you download it, is on GI Joes, the history of the GI Joes, and then I link that up with a couple principles that are learned through the Navy SEALs, through military, which is number 1, advance but protect your flanks,
Yeah,
and 2 is slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
that's right.
And using those from a business perspective, most people think that that military war, battles in the past have been won based on direct assaults, where actually the vast majority have been through pincer maneuvers around the backside, flanking maneuvers, right, where they find a weak spot and that's actually how they cut off the enemy. And in fact, in the book, I talk about how the Battle of the Bulge, which is kind of the last big battle of World War II on the Western Front, where they actually let the Nazis advance quickly, do their blitzkrieg into Allied territory, knowing they'd spread themselves thin, and then they did a pincer maneuver to cut off their supply lines. So they literally trapped them. And that actually, we talk about using that as a reference to what I was just referring to, that if you're building your business and advancing it and you're not reinvesting in those 3 things, you're actually leaving yourself exposed to a flanking maneuver. So that's how those 2 are connected. And the second principle of slow is smooth and smooth is fast. When you're a young business, let's say you're, 1 or 2, maybe you're just a solo founder to start off with. In the beginning, you're a generalist and you can make quick decisions and you move quickly because that's your advantage. You're nimble.
Right.
As you start to scale up the enterprise, once you have problem founder fit, my friends at the Category Pirates hate the word product market fit. So we'll go problem founder fit because I think it's a better, we have a problem and a founder's fixing it, right? And you're scaling and you're adding team members. You're going from being generalists to more specialists. And now you have to think more strategically about your decisions, because if you move really quickly, erratically, you start making mistakes that you have to come back and recorrect. And suddenly you're slowing the entire organization down just with drag and churn that goes on in the way that things are handling. So it's about making better quality decisions less frequently instead of
Mm,
that frenetic energy that you have at the beginning that drives it. So it's just the two concepts actually work together. The second
yeah,
one kind of drives the way your systems are going to evolve to make sure that you guys are making better quality decisions. And I think, again, I love the fact that it comes from military learnings, and also the fact that we can connect that to the GI Joes, which are a classic iconic toy. In fact, Hasbro basically built their brand on the back of
yeah,
that back in
yeah.
the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I want to take your riff and riff on top of that and just and point out like in my world, as a spy, as a collector, you've got certain tasks you've got to accomplish. And this is what I always impressed upon new collectors is if you don't ask the right questions, if you haven't mastered your questioning technique, which you can't do on day one, you have to like work and fail at this. And so when I'm critical, I'm trying to teach you like these your report is a reflection of what you did. And I see that you missed these questions. I see that you weren't in control of the meeting here. I can see
Mm,
these things. And so now you have to go back and do meeting one over again. And so you're not like, hello, I'm Pete. I would like to meet you. No, like we're past that point. We all acknowledge that. But the stuff you
hmm
should have done in the first meeting, you didn't do. And it wasn't, if it's by design, okay, great. But if it's because you didn't know or you couldn't, you have to go back and do meeting one. So now you're putting the entire element that goes with you in jeopardy again for you to do your job correctly again for the second time. And it makes meeting two, meeting three, and possibly four, and it's just like you can't make mistakes like that and earn
mm,
a spot on a patrol because you have to be more valuable, right? And so in my world, like tactical collection, you have to learn the very basic things. How do I ask a question? How do I take control? How do I not have control of a meeting but get what I want out of it? All these things, like this judo that we all do. And you're right, like it's slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And so if you come in and you're trying to outfox somebody on day one, you are
mm,
you are the fox. Like you are the thing that's going to be hunted and you're going to get taken out. It's just how it is. So I love that
mm.
you brought that example in.
Yeah. Look, I think there's another, we can segue into another principle I think is really important, which is the people you start with are not the people you're going to finish with.
Mm,
The
yeah,
team that got you to where you are is not necessarily the team that's going to get you to where you're going to go.
yeah.
And that kind of comes back to reinventing the team on an ongoing basis. And I have a chapter that talks about Toy Story. And if you think about the movie Toy Story, what's really cool is that each one of the toys have a superpower. Like Binoculars is
Mm,
really good at seeing far, RC can drive fast, Buzz can fly, I think. I don't know if he can or not. You know what I mean? Woody's a
yeah,
leader, but they all have like these superpowers that together make them incredibly capable for achieving a vision and a mission that they're on.
yeah, yeah.
And likewise, I think it's important that as we think about the teams we're building, that we are finding the specialists who actually can help us advance. Our missions should be
Mm,
sacred to what we're trying
yeah.
to achieve. And the number one regret with CEOs in North America today is that they didn't fire fast enough.
Mm,
And it
wow.
sounds crazy to hear that, but have you ever fired somebody too late?
Yeah.
No,
It's a it it's a
you
funny
haven't.
thing, right? Yeah,
Right. So the
yeah,
crazy part is this, is that we as leaders, we have this guilt about, like, it sucks. No one likes firing. I'm not a
right.
fan of going out firing. They're humans and we have this empathy that we want to try and do that. But here's what's happening. If you know somebody who's underperforming in a role and you leave them there for too long, there's three people you're hurting. Technically four, but we'll talk about the three. Number one, you're hurting yourself because you've lost trust with them. You no longer can delegate the work to them because you're afraid that they're going to do inferior work. So you're having to do extra work yourself to
Right,
try and actually compensate for that, which, by the way, the ancillary knock on is that your family gets affected by that. Right. And you're
right.
actually putting your family and the other families at risk by having incompetence. The second is the team around them, because everybody knows that they're not a high performer and they can see it. And now you're accepting a lower standard. So you're actually reducing the expectations in the company, which is very dangerous, right? If you're
Yeah.
saying I have high standards, but you're tolerating inadequacy, that is the level of
Oof.
behavior that you have now set for the
Yeah,
organization. And the third,
yeah.
and this is probably the one that hit me the hardest in learning this, was you're hurting the person themselves, because they actually have a place where they can thrive, where they can release their creative genius or whatever they do. It's just not with you. And you
Right.
hanging on to them is selfish because you're trying to avoid a difficult conversation and you think you're protecting them, but you're
Yeah,
just delaying the inevitable and them being able to find where they can actually thrive.
yeah, yeah. Another founder I've had on the show, I used to do handyman work for him, and his name's
Mm.
Chris Duggan, and he starts incredible companies. And he's like, there comes a time, 18 months, 24 months, where I've got to fire my director of sales because they're there to do this. And then the next guy I have to find is the guy that does this, and they're not the same guy. He's like, I don't. That's a rule. I've learned that. And you think, gosh, that's harsh. But it's not
Hmm.
wrong. You have to find the guy that knows, has the right address book and knows how to take you to the next level. And maybe you stick with your guy for a little longer than that, but that's his rule. He's like, I start looking to change around that time, no harm, no foul. Everybody knows the game in sales, and now it's time to change, and you're right, because if the company thrives, then everybody does better. And if you don't allow it as the boss, then
Right.
all these people you're mentioning, they all get hurt.
Yeah. Look, if we're into sports and you see them making cuts and trades on teams, we think nothing about that because we think they're
Yeah.
just doing the best thing for the benefit of the team to get the
Right.
right team to potentially win the championship. So
Yeah.
why would business be any different? I mean,
Right.
you're literally fighting for your life because number one, there's competitors who want you to go out of business. And number two is you're facing the adversities of just business and life.
Yeah.
And if you don't push against it and give yourself the best odds to succeed, you're actually risking not only your own life, but the lives of the families who've put their trust
Yeah.
into you. So, I if you haven't seen Last Dance, which is Michael Jordan's series on Netflix, I think it is a business masterclass in terms of like being obsessed with the best performing team. Phil Jackson takes this
Right.
star, who is Jordan, and builds a team around him of people who complement, not compete with him. And it isn't to build a championship, it's to build a dynasty.
Right.
And Michael Jordan is so obsessed with this that he literally calls out his teammates on the court, even gets into a fist fight with Steve Kerr, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But that's how obsessed he is with their mission to build the greatest dynasty, to be the GOAT, right? It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. 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 It is amazing. And you also have to realize you're competing with someone like that in your business world. We had Sly Stone on the show early on, and he
Mm.
said, this is Sly Stone. I mean, there's no greater musician, more impactful musician. It's not possible to be more impactful and incredible. And he says, if my music isn't good enough, I don't deserve to eat. So
Hmm.
when you think you're sliding all in because you cut your cable bill, that guy's cutting throats, man. He's not playing around. And so, yeah, there's a level of competition that you have to realize is out there, and you see that, and it's just, if you've got someone who's that determined, who's that focused, at the detriment of all kinds of other things in his life, it's hard. I want to ask you this because I think this is an important thing, and then I'm gonna let you go. 'Cause I know you're short on time, but it seems to me it's getting harder and harder to reliably hire people. I mean, I see good people all around me who punched out of the workplace are like, I can't find work. Fine, I'll do something else. And so they've taken themselves out. It's the young people that are trying to find jobs, and you can't click on apply here and reliably get anywhere. It's just that system doesn't reliably work. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It's just very hard to reliably find good people or have good people find you. So as a founder, how do you get around that? How do you build the trust that's necessary to hire someone that you don't know? And I don't mean people that you don't know that whose resume looks like someone you should know. I mean people that are right for your company. They're going to be accelerants for your company in a positive way.
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, if I took the most aspirational people in the world and I said, put together a list, and you came up with names like, Oprah, Elon, Branson,
Yeah.
you pick, if I ask you to tell me what are the most important attributes of those people, you would say things like courage. They have high EQ. They are, there would be things that were very aspirational in terms of the type of qualities of behavior. And yet, when we put together a job description with requirements, we're talking about things that are aptitudinal. In other words, what
Yeah.
school did you go to?
Right.
Are you a multitasker who can like do all these things? So we're hiring for the wrong things in general,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
do we really care what school they went to as long as they show up and do amazing work? I mean, I
Right.
personally don't. As
Yeah.
long as they are consistently awesome people, that is
Right.
what's most important. So I think it starts number one with us as employers. We
Yeah.
need, if we're not getting good people, it's because we're not selling our mission and vision well enough.
Mm.
It's really on you to sell it, that you're going to find your tribe by making it clear that your job descriptions are almost like an ad, like you're advertising for something that's super important, because your mission is really important to creating value in whatever industry you're in. And you need to sell it that way. I actually saw a job description for a garbage collection company in Ireland that was mind-blowing in terms of like how they just teased out all the value they create and how they've created this incredible culture and community. And it was super aspirational for collecting garbage. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in. You just need to tell a great story to then attract people who have the right attitude first, that fit your culture, and then have a really great gauntlet to put people through. We actually have 4 or 5 interviews for every single position, doesn't matter who. There's no exceptions to the rule. You have to go through it to ensure that you're actually, number one, a cultural fit, that you actually identify with our beliefs and the way that we view the world. Number 2, that you have some skills that are relevant. And number 3, that our value alignment is in fact on point. And even with that, quite frankly, after going through the gauntlet, we still get it wrong, but we've improved our odds dramatically. And I tell people that if you want to double down on this, there's a couple of things I recommend. The book Who by Brad Smart, super helpful in terms of how do you find and hire the right people. The other one is Patrick Lencioni's The Ideal Team Player, an incredibly good book as well that explains the attributes. And then Darren Hardy's Business Masterclass, also very good when it comes down to just looking to find players for your team.
I love it. And down below right now, by the way, is the book that you need to buy is Startup Santa, and there's the link on Amazon. It's in the remarks. It should be on the Break It Down Show page on Facebook, and on YouTube it's in my account in the chat. So get that because obviously there's fantastic guidance there. I don't want to take you anywhere your time, because I know you're busy and everything, but is there anything you want to say in closing before we wrap it up?
Look, the world more than ever needs hope right now. There's obviously, we've never known a world that hasn't had some level of conflict, but it does seem that there is, not only uncertainty in the Middle East and in Europe in general, but just sort of an apathy in North America. And I just want to encourage people that, the greatest threat to our planet is not nuclear war. It's not, the pandemic, which came and went, as we saw. It's not even, these current wars. The greatest threat to our planet is people's false belief that somebody else is going to look after your problems. Yeah. You have the ability to affect you and to make meaningful change in your organization, community, whatever your circle of influence looks like. And we need more people with hope, not fear, showing up to the conversations to inspire us to our better version of self. Because we have the ability to do incredibly good things, but we also can do incredibly evil and destructive things, as we've seen recently. So I just want to encourage people to strive to be a purveyor of hope in a planet who needs it so desperately right now.
I love it. All right, I'm going to roll these credits. Stand by.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly.